we kick off, because it's not quite midday, but we thought we'd open the doors early today to allow people in, because we are very organized today, thanks to Rob. He's come in early and sorted out his presentation. So we've kicked back, haven't we, Howard?
Yes, sometimes there's a lot of fast paddling underneath the water going on around here.
Indeed.
You've jinxed it now, though.
No pressure there, Rob, by the way, no pressure. Yeah, no, we'll let people come in. We are expecting quite a few more. There's only about a third of the number we're expecting at the moment. So we'll just give it a little bit longer. Just coming up to midday, I reckon. Is that, do you agree with me? I can hear the news in the background in my kitchen.
Not the happiest of news going on at the moment, really.
Not really, no, unfortunately. There's a few more people just dropping in now, so they were waiting till the midday hour rather than the midnight hour. Yes, I'm listening to the council results in the background and eagerly awaiting to see what's happened in my home county of Somerset. So,
what are you expecting?
What am I expecting? I'm not sure. I imagine the Liberal Democrats will make some inroads into the Conservative seats, is my guess. But yeah, I don't want to get political today.
No. I'm more interested to see how much longer these poor Marines can hold out in Mariupol to deny Putin a win on the 9th. I really just hope he doesn't parade prisoners through the streets. It'd be awful.
Well, look, it's a minute past. I think we'd perhaps make a start and then others can join us. So a very good afternoon to you. I'm Andrew Carpenter. I'm Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association and also of Constructing Excellence in the South West and Midlands. We're joined on these weekly webinars now by all my CE colleagues from around the UK and also the CIOB in bringing you this weekly Leaders Meets session. I'm delighted to say that we have Rob Merriman here with us today from Autodesk, who's going to talk about a very specialist area. So it's very targeted today, but we're looking at structural timber and steelwork modeling. But more of that in a moment. I'm going to hand over to my friend and colleague Howard Betts, who's just going to take us through the Leaders Meets requirements for today. So over to you, please, Howard. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yes, for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, given the content today, we're going to have a short poll to begin with by using Slido. Now, you can get into Slido one of two ways. You can go and use the QR reader, which is showing at the top left-hand corner, or you can go in via slido.com with today's code, which is LM060522. So I'll give you a moment to just sign in. We're going to be using Slido also for questions and answers. So if you have any questions you'd like to put to Rob, I would ask if you could please put it into Slido in the Q&A menu that you will see on your screen. If you think a question is a good question, one you may have wished to ask yourself or whatever, and there's more than one question, you can vote for it, which means it will come up to the top of the list. Finally, we will be asking you at the end if you could kindly give us some feedback on today's session. And again, that will be done through a Slido poll. We will announce when that opens up, and we'd ask if you could just take a minute to give us some feedback. So let's open the poll up and let's go through the questions. Someone has already done it, so thank you very much. So the first question, please, Abraham. Are your structural timber beams columns connected with bolts and a steel plate? Simple yes, no answer. So are your structural timber beams columns connected with bolts and steel plates? So let's have the next question, please. Are there any steel beams or columns in your timber buildings? So are there any steel beams, columns in your timber buildings? So the next question. Is the modeling and detail of these steel or timber structural elements being done manually in 2D? So yes or no, is the modeling and detailing of these steel or structural or these timber structural elements being done manually in 2D? And we have one more question. Is this manually detailing time consuming and leads to errors on site? So is this manually detailing time consuming and leads to errors on site? So this questionnaire will remain open. So if you want to take a little bit more time to answer it, please do. The actual results we will go through at the end of Rob's presentation. So I'm going to hand back now to Andrew. Many thanks.
Thanks very much, Howard. Okay, Rob. Great that you could join us today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy diary to share your knowledge, experience and expertise with us. Obviously, it's a very targeted subject today, so I'm sure the people on the call are specifically interested in what you have to say. So what I suggest we do is we let you get on with your presentation, and then as people have questions, would ask them please to go to Slido, jot them down in there, and then after the presentation, Rob will go through the survey and then any questions that have come in at the same time. So I've had a long association with Greytech and with Autodesk for a number of years, certainly through my time as chairman of BIM for Housing. So I can promise you a very worthwhile and valuable time spent listening to Rob. So I'm going to mute myself. You'll be pleased to know now, Rob, and let you take over. So all yours.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you for the warm welcome. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and hear me okay. We did test it earlier, but if there are any problems, just let me know in the Teams chat. But it says I'm sharing my screen. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at structural timber and steelwork modeling, and then the automatic fabrication creation, like Andrew said with me, Rob Merriman. One thing to note, I do have my 4-year-old daughter at home today. She is off ill today. I have set her up with everything she needs, but I can guarantee that she will walk in a minute or two asking for something. So apologies if that does happen. So a little bit about me to begin with. If anyone does want, after this presentation, or wants to discuss the topics of today's webinar in more depth, my contact information is there. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So I've got 13 years, probably need to update this, nearly 14 years now experience in the construction industry. 8 years of that was spent as an architectural, metalwork and structural steelwork draftsman using Autodesk Advanced Steel. During that time, I actually worked in 2 subcontract drawing offices. So that allowed me to work with about 15 or so fabricators in each company. And it allowed me to work across multiple disciplines and lots of different projects, including timber projects, which is why I'm trying to show you guys this today. So I did do a lot of steel modeling inside timber SIP buildings. So my current role, I work as an application engineer for Greytech UK. We are a Autodesk Platinum partner. We've got a minute or so on Greytech in a second. So anything to do with structural CAD packages, I look after. So my main focus is Advanced Steel, but I do look at AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, basically anything to do with structures, I will look at. So we'll just do a minute on Greytech and go how Greytech could benefit you. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in today's session? So we're actually going to look at what is advanced steel. We're then going to, the focus today is advanced steel for timber, but at the beginning of the session, we will just talk about advanced steel. So even if you are steelwork focused and you're not timber focused, we will talk about advanced steel as well. We will then look at advanced steel for timber. We'll talk about the different types of timber output and the companies we've worked with. And then we'll mention, we do actually have a couple of, if people are interested in this, we do have some test drive sessions. We do have a Greytech conference coming up, and I'll just talk about some advanced steel content if anyone is interested in a bit more depth for advanced steel. So what is advanced steel? It is Autodesk's solution for modeling structural steelwork and architectural metalwork. It actually used to be a Greytech product. Autodesk acquired it from Greytech in 2014. It is now part of the AEC collection. So if you have an AEC collection, you actually have access to advanced steel right now. You could install it at the end of this session. One of the key benefits, it is built in or on top of the AutoCAD environment, which is why I want to talk about why I want to highlight it to people today, because if you're doing, we'll find out the results of the poll at the end of the session. If you are manually modeling your steelwork in 2D at the moment in the AutoCAD environment, and you're familiar with the AutoCAD environment, then the advanced steel product is actually familiar to you guys already. Now, what we can do with advanced steel is automatically place over 200 parametric steel connections. So I have pre-recorded this, but we're actually going to go and look at advanced steel. So what we have here is because advanced steel is a 3D platform, if I want to model a 3D beam, I literally click the beam command, choose my start point, choose my end point, like you would draw a line in AutoCAD at the moment. We then can choose from basically any standard section from around the world. They're all preloaded into advanced steel. You don't need to load anything. And here we have our connection vault. So this is where we've got our 200 connections. You simply choose the connection, choose the member that you want to apply it to. And then within a few seconds, what the system will do here is it will create the base plate, the anchors to go into the concrete, and it actually welds it all together for me as well. And then what we do, everything to do with advanced steel, we work through this dialog box in here. So if I want to change the anchors, the spacings of the anchors, we can literally work through this. We can change the weld information. Do we need extra stiffeners? That sort of thing. So if we look at some actual beam to beam connections here, we're going to put a single-sided end plate on, choose one beam, choose the beam that's connected into it. And again, the system will take care of everything for you. And that is putting the bolts in, it's putting the holes in the beam, it's putting the holes in the plate, it's welding everything together, it's taking care of basically everything for you. And it's just a case of working through the dialogue to match what your connection engineer requires. So just as a real high level overview to begin with, we're just going to put a few different connections on these bits in here. So what we're putting on here is a toe plate connection. So you can see the bolts aren't exactly positioned correctly. So what we do is we just increase the center distance to something a bit more reasonable, like 90 millimeters. And then we can change how the bolts are set out vertically. And then finally, another standard or industry standard connection would be a fin plate connection. So again, what we can do in here is we can go through, change our bolt centers, and then put the fin plate in the middle of that beam. Now, what we can do with advanced steel as well, because we're in a 3D environment, I can clash check the steelwork. So the system will tell me if something is clashing. And you can see in there, I've got some stiffeners that the joint put on, and those are currently clashing with the bolts. So the system will tell me that. And that gives me the benefit of picking up any errors with our steelwork or our structural timber before we get to site, because obviously, as I'm sure those of you who have to deliver steelwork or have steelwork projects on site, if there is a problem, it's quite time consuming and quite expensive to rectify problems on site. At the moment, this is just a 3D model, so it will take seconds for me to correct the error. Now, what I didn't realize in here is that on the column it's made from a beam cutting, so I had to change it to a plate, and I've still got an issue in there because I didn't turn all the stiffeners off properly. So it's just a case of going back into the dialog and saying, okay, we want to turn the stiffeners off. And when I clash check it for the final time, that will tell me that there are no errors in that model now. Now, I'm showing you advanced steel, but if you have an AC collection, you're possibly doing this kind of work inside of Revit. Revit doesn't have all 200 connections, but we could have modeled that in Revit. What we can do with advanced steel then is once our modeling is complete, we can then actually produce piece part drawings and assembly drawings in minutes for the whole project. And for the fabrication, we can then generate CNC data for the members and plates automatically with a click of a button. So let's, again, go back in and have a look at what we can do for the output from advanced steel. And then in a minute, we'll move on to some timber specific things. So once we have run the numbering on our model, the system will determine what's the same and what's different. We then have a palette on the left-hand side that you can see where I can choose what I want to run and how I want to run it. So I click the all plates button. So what it will do is the system will find the plates and then it will put those onto drawing sheets for me. And for my assemblies, I've clicked the all assemblies button. Now, there are 4 assemblies in here. It will take 2 to 3 seconds per drawing. And then we're going to go and have a look at what the system will do when those drawings have run. So with advanced steel, what we have is we have what we call a document manager. So the system here is telling me these are all the piece part drawings. So if we have a look at the plate drawings, that is what it takes 2 or 3 seconds to produce. So it gives you the horizontal and vertical dimensions. So those are our piece part marks. And then for our assemblies, what the system will do is it will show you what's welded together, how it's welded together, what parts you need. So it's round tripping all of the piece part information. So you can see there that column's got a toe plate, a fin plate. It's giving all the welding information. Now to run our CNC data, I select the plates in the model. I push the button for a DXF file, and that will create those files for me. And what the system, it produces those files so that a plasma machine or a laser machine can actually just go and cut out all of those plates ready for the fabricator. And then the fabricator actually needs to order that material. So again, rather than us measuring things and creating a list in Excel manually, because everything has been 3D modeled, we can extract all of that data into a material list, for example. So this will tell me how much 254, 146, 31 I need, what it's broken down into, what plates I need, and that kind of thing. So that is a very high level overview of advanced steel. I know for Andrew and the Structural Timber Association, we are looking at advanced steel for timber. So why advanced steel for timber? For me, structural timber models are simply beams and columns. And in advanced steel, it doesn't matter whether that is an I-beam or a structural glulam beam. So that sort of project in there, that's something that I've created in advanced steel in the past. That is a mix of steel and timber. There are already timber sections defined in advanced steel. So we've got timber purlins, we've got stock square timbers, we've got glulam sizes. And with advanced steel, if there isn't something in there, we can actually add it in ourselves. We do already have a number of the STA members using Advanced Steel and structural timber companies using Advanced Steel. So a few examples are, for example, Stuart Milne. We've done a training package with all the offices of Stuart Milne. Fording Bridge, they use it for their canopies and things like that. And then we've got companies such as Byram Associates, Harmony Timber, Fleming Homes, Frame Homes, Castle Oak, Sipco, who are predominantly a timber business, but the majority of their projects will have some structural steel work buried in there. And then, hang on a second, my daughter's trying to get in. Sorry about that. I knew that would happen today. So although these companies are 90% timber, there is some steelwork in their projects, and that we found that's what is producing their bottlenecks and is slowing them down and things like that. So these are companies already that have introduced Advanced Steel to their workflow. And structural timber or steel to timber, they are connected with steel plates, bolts, anchors, and welds. So there's an example where we've got a glue lam column, but we've got a steel foot on it. And for you guys, you will need to produce fabrication drawings, CNC, and data for those steelwork or the glue lam. And obviously that's what we just looked at about with Advanced Steel. Robin, is the system, I've just seen a question come up in the Zoom chat, so I'll just pick this up. Is the system objectified where you can alter any piece of information and adjust the details or spec and vice versa? Yes. So when we put connections on in Advanced Steel, we put the connections on between the two members. So if I move a member and a member has to move 300 millimeters, that connection will move with it. So all the plates, all the bolts, all the welds, that will move automatically. If your connection engineer comes back and says, oh, I'm sorry, we specified 3M16 bolts, but it now needs to be 3M20 bolts and the plate needs to be bigger, we just go into that dialogue like I did before, change the values, and the system will update itself. If we then make updates to the model, the document manager will then recognize that changes have been made, and it will warn us that the drawings are now out of date to the model. So we then the system will allow us to update the drawings as and when we need to. Now, Advanced Steel is a steel detailing program. So out of those 200 connections, there aren't currently ones in there for timber to timber or timber to steel. But what we can do is we can create what we call custom connections. So we're just going to, I'm not going to show you the building of each individual piece because I appreciate we're only here for a set amount of time. I could probably do 3 or 4 hours for you guys on this, but it's a Friday. So I have already created that connection that we just looked about, but that is just by doing everything that we've talked about and modeling some bits manually. But what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to clash check it. I am then going to create what we call a custom connection. I'm also going to check what's attached in the workshop, so we can see that fin plate is attached in the workshop. There's some setup that I need to do in here. So that connection doesn't exist in the system. But what we have with Advanced Steel is we have what we call a custom connection. So I can build everything, and then I can say, right, I want to apply this. I'm going to give it a name. So this is a 240 glue lam column that I have. We're going to choose my input, which is going to be, the input is going to be the glue lam column. And then I'm choosing what I want the system to apply. So I want it to apply all of that information to my glue lam column automatically. So it's something I don't want to model across multiple projects. Now we do need to save this in a particular folder. so that the system recognizes it as what we call a custom connection. So the file I'm going to call this DWG file custom connections. And I can close that down. Now, if I delete that from my file and we reset the glulam column so that it has no cuts on it, no shortenings on it, we just modeled it as a glulam column, I can then say, right, I want to insert a custom connection. We can see that there is the folder there, custom connections, choose the glulam connection, click on the column, and hey presto, the system will apply all of that information automatically. So it just means that I can model it once, I can then use it across multiple projects. I can then start to copy these joints from place to place. So if I'm happy with that, I can say I want to copy that joint to this glulam column here. Now this was bad modeling on my part. I'd actually modeled that glulam column, although it's a square column, it does have an XY position, so I'd modeled that incorrectly. So here I've just rotated it, and you can see as soon as I rotate it, the connection rotates as well. And then I think we're going to jump to then a column to rafter with like an internal fin plate. So again, if you look, it says choose the column, choose the rafter. It will then cut the column down to the rafter. It puts the steel plate in. It puts the 12 bolts in, and the way that I've set this connection up, it will then rebate or counterbore, sorry, those connections. Now, one thing that some of those companies I listed find is that what they have to do is, if you're putting timber into a steel building, we then need to pack the webs and the flanges of that steelwork so that we can put joist hangers off it and things like that. So it is possible to create timber packed steel in Advanced Steel. Now that timber packing, we can actually model it as a plate element where we can actually just draw in a rectangle and then give it a thickness. So it allows us to create packing of different thicknesses if we need it, or we can then create that packing from stock sizes. So that's an example of some steelwork that is got some bolted connections in there like we've just been looking at. There is a couple of glulam beams in there, but some of the timber has been flange packed and web packed, and that's all done again within the Advanced Steel environment. And then if we look at some of the customization that we've done for some people for their timber workflows, it is possible for us to customize the drawing output because what we've been asked for is that for some of these companies, the steelwork goes off to a separate subcontract fabricator. They do the welding of all the steel components. It then comes back to the timber company, and then that timber company is the one that will do the packing of the web and the flanges. So they need two drawings. So what we can do in Advanced Steel is we've customized it. So this drawing in here says it's the steel fabrication for one number beam that's marked B1. And in the bottom of our drawing border, it says that it's STL for steel, it's an assembly, and the assembly number is B1. So this is our automatic drawing that gives the steel fabricator the information to weld plate F1003 to mark B1. These are the holes that they need to check, and then this is the location of the plate. And then you'll see a bill of materials down here in the lower left corner that says you need this beam and this plate. So that's the steel fabrication part done. We can then create a second copy of that drawing, but this one is called TMB for timber. And what you'll see is that it doesn't give any of the information for the steelwork, but what it's doing here is it's noting and dimensioning where the bottom flange pack is going, where the top flange pack is going. And you can see in the bottom, again, the bottom left, our bill of materials, it's telling me what timber packing we need for that particular beam. So this is some of the customization that we at Greytech have done for some of the companies that I mentioned earlier on. So it is possible to produce this kind of output from advanced steel. For timber CNC, we can export NC files. So NC stands for numerical control. Now, NC files are usually used for a steelwork drill and saw line. So if anyone does have any particular machinery that needs particular formats, please reach out to me or ask it in the Q&A when we get to the end of this presentation. As I said, Greytech don't own Advanced Steel anymore, but in the introduction to Greytech, it mentioned that we create our power packs. So the Greytech power pack is Greytech's add-in for Advanced Steel. We've created a command where it's possible to export parts to a step file, IGES, SAT, or a DWG format. So we can actually pick the 3D elements from the model, so our glulam beams and columns, and then create a SAT file, which I know one of our customers uses for their glulam. So that is our power pack ribbon, and we have this export parts to solids in here. So, because I know I'm limited to time, like I said, I could bore you for 4 hours on advanced steel, but this is just a high level overview. If any of you are interested in advanced steel and actually want to try it out for yourself, we are running at the end of May as part of Greytech. We are running some test drives. So if you or your team want to actually try advanced steel, we've got 2 test drive events. One is happening on May 24th in our Bradford office. The second event is May 26th in our Southampton office. And what we have is we have about a 3.5 hour session. So mornings we run from 9 to 12:30, afternoons from 1 to 4:30, and we limit that to 6 places per session. So that'll be sat with me or my colleague, and we will actually give you step by step how advanced steel works. I will put the link in the chat, but if you do just search Greytech UK Advanced Steel Test Drive, you will be able to find that in there. One thing that's happening with Greytech next week is our annual BIM Up conference. So we run a 3-day free online conference. This is our 4th year now, so we did start this just before, or the year before, the pandemic as an online conference. It looks at Greytech and Autodesk tips, tricks, and workflows. So if people here are using AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, analysis packages, we have over 200 classes looking at all that. It's all online, all free. As with this event, you can catch up on demand as well. So I will put the link for the registration there, but it is happening next week. And then finally, part of my job is to do webinars like this. We usually do them for Greytech, but I obviously then do them for other companies and institutions like we're doing today. So our Greytech ones, if you want to explore advanced steel a bit more in your own time, we have a Greytech Advanced Steel content portal where we have over 60 sessions from the last 5 years. And we do, for example, there have an overview for new users. So I have done a bit of a longer workflow for timber within advanced steel and just advanced steel itself. So again, you can find that kind of information online. And like we said, we do have a lot of content in there for advanced steel. And that is the end of my presentation today. So first of all, thank you to Andrew, Howard, and Abraham for firstly inviting me to present today. It's always nice to be invited to present these sessions. Like we said at the beginning, it is a very niche and specific topic, but hopefully, I've seen one question come through. Hopefully it has been beneficial to everyone. And like I said, we'll answer any questions now, but if anyone does need any more information, please just reach out to me. You'll find me online somewhere.
Thank you, Rob, very much for your time. I'm just looking on Slido at the moment, and there are no questions. So folks, if you've got any questions for Rob, please take the opportunity now and jot them down in Slido, and we'll come to them after we've had a look at the survey results. So Abraham, if we could look at the survey results. So are your structural timber beams columns connected with bolts and steel plates? Let's have a look at what the audience said. So predominantly yes. Does that surprise you, Rob?
No, I mean, I sort of know a lot of the answers to these questions because, you know, I walk around building sites, or when I'm walking around shopping centres or anywhere I see glulam, I look up now rather than looking at the actual shop itself. So it is used. There are lots of bolts and plates and stuff.
Sure, that's far less expensive.
It is, yeah.
Less pressure on the wallet. Let's have the next question then, please. So, are there any steel beams, columns in your timber building? So 3/4 of the 8 people that have responded say yes.
Again, it's
no surprises, I suspect.
Yeah, it's, you know, like the companies I mentioned, they are using advanced steel because their timber buildings do have some steelwork in there somewhere.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to is the modeling and detailing of these steel or timber structural elements being done manually in 2D? So 2/3 are being done manually. We've got a way to go there, Rob, haven't we?
Yeah, but that is what we are finding, because again, your members, their focus is on the timber part of the building, because that is, like we said, 80-90% of their business. But we do find that the steel work, if it's been done manually, although it's such a small part of the building, it can be where these bottlenecks are producing. And I imagine that when we move to the next question, we will find that there are errors and things like that.
Okay, let's go to the next question then. Is this manual detailing time consuming and leads to errors on site? So yes, 3/4 of the people say yes.
Yeah, and
it is.
And that is how I started my career 13 years ago, is creating the steelwork in 2D AutoCAD. So you're manually drawing plans and elevations. And because you're doing it manually, you know, it does open it up to errors. And like I said, I've been there. I spent 18 months doing it to learn steel detailing in 2D, like my boss would have learned on a drawing board. And compared to a 3D package, that for the types of connections and steelwork that will be in these buildings, I would say it's not too complicated. So to go from 2D to 3D won't be too much of a jump.
I have to say, I was chairman of BIM for Housing for 4 years, and getting the housing sector to adopt BIM, for example, was like plaiting fog. To be honest, it was very difficult.
Yes, I can well imagine.
Anyway, we've now got a question from the audience, so to speak. Can you see advanced steel replacing existing timber frame software on the market? I'm sure I know what the answer you'd like to happen, but
well, no, I would say no, and for me the answer is no, because when you're talking timber framing, if you're talking plugins inside Revit or plugins inside AutoCAD architecture, they are designed and set up for timber framing. Right. So advanced steel is never going to replace that. But all the companies that I mentioned earlier haven't replaced any of their software with advanced steel, but they've just replaced doing it in 2D AutoCAD with advanced steel. So they are still using things like the Horizon plugins, the MWF plugins. They are still using those tools, but they're just using a better tool for the steelwork side of things. So the software will complement each other. If you're working in AutoCAD architecture, we can XREF the models together, so you can see the advanced steel model in your timber software. You can see the timber model in your advanced steel software. And if you're working inside Revit, there is a workflow to transfer models between Revit and advanced steel. So no, I don't see anything replacing anything. It's more complementary software. The way I explain it is, you know, in everyone's timber workshops, for example, you've probably got 10 or 15 different ways of cutting a piece of wood, and you've got different saws for different applications. BIM software and software in the construction industry is exactly the same. There is not one answer to do it all. You have lots of different tools for lots of different reasons.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me just have a look in the chat box. I don't think that. Can you see anything else in the chat box, Rob? I don't think there's anything.
Not on the Zoom chat, no.
No, and I'm just looking at the questions on Slido, and I don't see any more questions. Have I missed anything, Howard or Abraham? I don't think I have. In which case, Rob, thank you very much for joining us. As always, we put these webinars up on our own website and also that of Leaders Meets. So this will be available for people beyond the people just in the room, so to speak. If anyone would like a certificate of what you've heard today, go to My Pro Pass. There it is on the screen. Create your free account, and then you automatically will receive a certificate which can be stored in your My Pro Pass account. So that's very well worthwhile doing. And as I say, thank you, Rob, for your time, for your experience and your expertise. Howard and Abraham, as always, thank you for your hosting abilities. As always, tip top. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We will be back next week at the normal time, but we're having a slight change of speaker. I won't bore you with the reasons, but watch this space, so to speak. And we'll be going live with lots of social media activity to promote next Friday's webinar on Monday next. So for me, have a good rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend. And I'll see you all next week, same time, same place. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.